serving and empowering nurses. This is Nurse Connect with Christine. Hello again, podcast family. And today's interview is very interesting because this is something that's going to be very helpful for you, especially nurses, of course, as we talk about buying an investment property as a registered nurse. Okay, and so we have a beautiful guest today, as you can see. And so I do hope that you're going to stay tuned for the rest of this podcast because V is going to answer all these questions that you guys have in mind into having set foot to own a property in Australia. And so to introduce you guys, I do have here, as I said, beautiful V Perez. Now she's I've known her for quite some time now. I believe 4 years. V, is that right? Yes, and so she's definitely the one that I needed to interview today because she do have also a really good investment portfolio. And apart from that, to introduce you, she's a dynamic mortgage broker and a chartered accountant. Okay, so she does have she is a migrant background and success also as a propriety investor, and she will bring us valuable insights into the property market. She's definitely a problem solver and known for her analytical skills, of course, as an accountant, right? And she is also going to be your personal non bank affiliated loan expert. She will offer you unbiased, cost free advice, helping you to choose the right loan. And she's here with us today to share her insights and strategies, okay? Demonstrating how you can earn your own home, which isn't just a dream, okay? As we walk you through this interview today. And also, guys, please get ready to be inspired and learn how to make property ownership a reality. And let's welcome V. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Christine, and hello to all our listeners. I'm very excited to be here. As Christine mentioned, my name is Vee Perez, and I'm your mortgage broker partner who helps first-time home buyers and investors to get access to home loan financing. What makes me different from others is that my loyalty is to you. I work for you, and the only interest I have is yours. In this episode, my goal is to equip you with some knowledge because I believe knowledge equals freedom. And being
Mm-hmm.
raised from a developing country, I quickly realized that knowledge levels the playing field and gives us a fair shot at success. So, home ownership is not a dream.
Right. Yes. And that's exactly what we're gonna learn from this podcast today, guys. And so let's dive into the first question that everyone has, I believe, as a nurse, the importance of investing early, V, and we wanted to highlight the benefits, especially for the nurses.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question, Christine. But before I answer, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks and respect to the nurses of the Australian healthcare
Mm.
system, including you. I and my family are recipients of nurses' unwavering commitment and compassion. And today, I also want to put out a disclaimer because I'll be providing broad, general information and not personalized advice within the context of home ownership for first home for permanent residents and Australian citizens. Please always consider how the information I mentioned today it aligns with your personal circumstances and goals and needs before making any decision. All right, so let's zero in into the vital strategy for nurses and why it's important to invest early. Strategic financial planning is particularly beneficial for nurses looking to step into the housing market early. With property prices rising significantly each year, delaying this decision or this investment decision might mean you're actually missing out on these valuable opportunities. So, early investment can be a game changer in the long run. But how do you do this? A critical aspect in planning to make this happen is income. And this plays a very significant role in determining your borrowing capacity. Nurses find themselves in an advantageous position, and thanks to the high demand in your field. This demand opens up diverse opportunities for you from single to multiple roles and highlighting the unique flexibility and stability inherent in nursing. In addition to that, your overtime also gets favorable treatment by the lender. Unlike other professions where only a portion of the overtime income is considered, for you, lenders often account for the entirety of nurses' overtime. And these
Mm.
will substantially boost your borrowing potential higher. And for those considering a second job, I would like to remind you that consistency is vital. You need to have a steady 6 month period in your second role
Mm.
for it to be counted towards your loan application. So, again, if you want to move up, bring up your borrowing capacity, your casual income or your second job need to be at least 6 months. So,
Mhm.
what is this serviceability? Most people would tell you you need to pass that serviceability. So, what is this technical term? Well, in simple language, it's really your ability to manage your loan repayments based on your income, expenses, and financial obligations. Lenders evaluate this to determine your suitability for loan. And also, they're going to decide how much they're going to lend you and the terms you can comfortably manage. So, in
Mhm.
summary, you nurses, very, very good news here. You have two key advantages. One is a wide array of your job opportunities, and two, the full recognition of your overtime by the lenders. These really are good benefits, allowing you to make early investment, especially in real estate, for your wise financial strategy for the future.
Yes. And I remember when I was still, working early on my nurses VM, I work, overtime all the time. so that's another. So that's very good to point out with nurses, of course. There you go, guys. And to continue, V, with another question, are there any other grants from the governments for specifically for nurses?
Yes, yes. There are other grants from the government. As of 1st July, we'll mention two beneficial government grants and initiative for first home buyer that you can take advantage of. And these are both national schemes where specific property value limits and grants vary between states and territories, but they are not income tested. So that's a good news there. So one is what we
Mm-hmm.
call a first home owner grant, where it's a one-off tax-free grant for eligible first home buyer. This grant is available for purchase or construction of new homes, including houses, townhomes, apartments, units, or even substantially renovated homes. Eligibility requirement, it has to be ticked, one of which is a person needs to be or a nurse needs to be 18 years of age, be an Australian citizen or permanent resident, and have not previously owned a property or received this type of grant. So you can only get it
Mm-hmm.
once. And in terms of the amount, just an example, because this grant is state specific, we're just going to pick New South Wales as an example here. The grant is up to 10,000 for new homes, valued up to 600K.
Wow.
Then, if it's
Yeah.
a new home and land packages, it can be up to 750K. So that's one. And then the second grant is what we call a first home buyer assistance scheme. So, what is this? This provides stamp duty exemptions or concessional rates for first home buyers. So, what is this stamp duty? So, when you buy a property, the government is charging what they call a transfer fee, and this is usually 4% of the purchase price. But if you are eligible in New South Wales, if your property you're buying is under 800K or the vacant land is under 350K, you will get this for free. Like you don't have to pay any stamp duty. But if you're a person buying slightly higher, if you buy a property up to 1 million, then you'll get concessional tax rate. So you're not going to pay the full 4%. You're going to get concession. And if you want to buy a vacant land, it can be up to 450. So um,
Mm-hmm.
have to remind that it's not for investment purposes. You'll get this because the government is helping first time home buyers, so you have to live in the property. So to
Mm-hmm.
summarize, these grants are helps you to it's actually the government partly paying for your house
Mm-hmm.
effectively, and so it's really important that you consider these grants when planning when you're going to buy and when you're ready.
Yes. That's really good, V. By the way, listening to it, I did hear about it, but for those of you who are listening, by the way, this only has started July this year, okay? And that's why I thought I'll interview you, V. You know, because it's very timely. For those of you who are wanting to get into property investment, I think this is the best time with all the grant that V has mentioned. I mean, this is really the best time, right, V?
Yes,
And
yes.
also, yes, so I love those grants there that you've mentioned. And also the other question, I guess, moving forward, um definitely, right? One of the biggest question, how can they start investing now, V? And what's the minimum deposit required? Although the deposit, I think you've tackled it a little bit there, right? But
Mhm.
can you tell us more about it?
Yes, yes, definitely. That's a very good question. And let's explore some exciting pathways for nurses on this topic. So we have what we call a New South Wales Shared Equity Home Buyer Helper. I'm going to talk about the
Mm,
first home guarantee. And if you don't qualify with either of those two, what can you do? So I'm going to touch up on that as well. And then lastly, some strategies on how you're going to align your income with your borrowing capacity so that you have like strategies in your pocket on how to do that. So let's start with the New South Wales Shared Equity Home Buyer Helper. And this is a fantastic option for those looking to buy a home to live in, and it's relevant for nurses because you are being identified as a key worker and therefore you qualify under this scheme. The scheme's income criteria is for a single people to earn up 93,200 for singles, and if you're a couple there's a cap of 124,200. So what does it mean?
mm,
Under the scheme, you will be buying a property which you will be co owning with the government. The government will be paying 40% of the home's purchase price. And in terms of deposit, and this is the good news, you only need to set aside 2%. So
oh,
if,
wow.
for example, that's right. If, for example, you have a 700, looking to buy a 700K property, then you need to pass a serviceability test for 686K loan. So that's 98% of the 700K. If you don't pass the serviceability, that's why I discussed the income first because that's really that's
Yeah.
the foundation. If you don't pass the serviceability of the 98% of 700K, you won't qualify. But if you do, to get access to this, you go and contact Bendigo Bank because this is currently being centralized by the government. So Bendigo Bank will assess your eligibility and assist with your application process. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say serviceability is an issue. Then let's move on to the next one, a possible way for you to get started. And that is what we call a first home guarantee. This is also a statewide scheme provided by the government. And what it means is that if you haven't owned a property in Australia in the last decade, you can still qualify. If you're
Mm,
Yeah, so it's not just for first home buyer. If you had before but you haven't owned in the past 10 years, you can still qualify. But under this scheme, what it means is you're getting a property, of course, to live in. And if you have between 5 and 15% deposit and meet the income requirements of 125,000 for singles and 200,000 for couples, then maybe this is an option for you. The other good news about this is that you don't have to pay loan mortgage insurance or LMI.
LMI.
So, what
Mm,
is this LMI, right? Well, LMI is the insurance that the lender takes out to insure itself. against the risk of not recovering the outstanding loan balance from you. So this is required if you, the borrower, are unable to meet your loan repayments. Say the property is sold less than the outstanding amount. And this happens, normally happens, the lender will require you an LMI to pay an LMI, which is normally about 2% of the purchase price if you don't have at least 20% deposit. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
So in our example, it's 700K, it's 14,000 roughly. So it vary a little bit from lender to lender, but roughly 2%. And with the
Yeah.
first home guarantee, it's free, it's waived. So you just need to
Mm-hmm.
qualify with
That's
their
good.
requirements. That's right. And the catch is there are property price threshold based on different regional cities across Australia. So there is like a cap of the property price if you want to avail this grant from or this scheme from the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot, B, by the way, listening to it. But yes, and also just wanted to tell you guys, because yes, it's always good to put down more deposit, but at the same time, V and I wanted to help you, secure a property because we all know that property appreciates every single year, right?
Mm,
And so, yeah, so that's very valuable information there, V. And I
mm.
think, our listener will watch this again, right? And so, yes, I was gonna ask the question, the best area for investing, but of course, we'll leave that to contact you, okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
For if they are, wanting to secure. But the next question, V, I wanted to ask you, although definitely it depends on where they live in, but
Hmm.
is it better to buy an apartment or a house? And possibly tell us about rent vesting as well, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
V? Yes.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So
Yes.
let's start with rent vesting. So rent vesting, as the name suggests, is you're renting and you're
Mm-hmm.
investing. So really finding an area where to buy a property to invest needs to be balanced with the affordability and your desired lifestyle. A Rent vesting is a strategy that's gaining traction simply
Mm-hmm.
because what it's promising is you're gonna buy where you can afford and live where you want to live. And so this is really essentially what it means. So you can buy a property as your first home, live in it, and then rent it out and move on to a desired area where you want to live is essentially
Mm-hmm.
the essence of this. Advantages, well, as we spoke about, it's affordable because you can pick an area where you can afford. But of course, you have to balance it with the investment growth because, after all, you want
Mm-hmm.
an area that has a high potential for appreciation and also
Correct.
rental yields. And then you're going to get tax benefit as an investor because the moment that you rent out that first home of yours and rent elsewhere, then you're going to start kicking in the process of owning rental there, and therefore all the expenses associated with maintaining that property, including the
Mm-hmm.
interest expense that goes with your mortgage, will be tax deductible. So simplistically, in terms of the benefit for you is, say you have a total of 10,000 expense. Let's say your marginal tax rate is 30%. Then you're going to get $3,000 as a tax refund, which you can use to pay your rent in a place where you want to live. Is on a high level the concept of rent vesting.
That's
Now,
right, V.
yeah, thank
Mm-hmm.
you. And then, but yeah, again, it has to be balanced with your overall long-term plans and affordability and also your financial goals. Now, you've asked also a question about, is it better to buy an apartment or a house? So, well,
Yes.
deciding whether to buy an apartment or a house is really a significant choice, and each option comes with its own sets of pros and cons. The
Mm-hmm.
best choice for you will depend on your lifestyle preferences, financial situation, and what's that long-term goal of yours. So,
Yeah.
but let's tackle each one of that. But before that, let me preface it by saying, based on the 50 years of data of Australian Bureau of Statistics, the property prices in Australia doubles in value in an average of 7 to 10 years. And this applies to
Wow.
both apartments and houses.
Oh,
So,
wow.
meaning you're
Yep.
not really going to go wrong in either one
That's
of
true.
the choices that you pick. But yeah,
Well,
in terms,
that's a really good data, V, because I always thought, landed house would appreciate more. But obviously there you have the backup there, right?
it
To
does,
really
yeah, it does.
mm,
The appreciation of house and land would be more and more it's accelerated. The apartment is a little bit less in terms of that, but there also appreciates in value. So the positive side of buying an apartment is that of course it's affordable. You can buy within your budget and making it
mm-hmm.
attractive
Yeah,
for those who just want to get in the market. Maintenance
right.
wise, it's less maintenance because it's just a unit. Location, you can
Mm-hmm.
pick closer to amenities, public transport, and so on, and it's more secured because of the features that goes along with that. And then the cons, you have
Right.
the strata, and then there are some restrictions like pet ownership. You can do much with the renovation, and the
Mm-hmm.
capital growth is there, but it's slightly lower compared to the house. So
I
that's the
see.
comparison.
That's
Now,
the other
mm-mm,
comparison.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're buying a house, obviously it's more expensive, but you have more space. You also have
Mm-hmm.
freedom to customize how you would like the
That's
house to
true.
look like. And yeah, the capital growth is really there. It's proven. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, don't have strata fees to go along with that. But your maintenance is a lot because you have to have the lawn mowing, the roof, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's really up to the individual's preference and budget at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes, yep. So that's very true, V. Definitely depends on, what are your long-term goals or the savings that you have, right? But I think it's very important to highlight here that any investment that you make in the long run, with the proper guidance, of course, on where to invest, you can have a really good yield there, whether
Hmm.
it's a house or an apartment. But the other question would be, I don't know if nurses have financial issues, right? Because they're always working, but hopefully not. But there's overcoming financial challenges, okay? And can you talk us about the low credit scores or high debt in terms of borrowing? I guess that's what it's for, right, B, for them to be
Yeah.
able to borrow. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So, well, this is really good because some people think that if they have an existing debt, so long as they have a deposit, that they'll be okay to borrow money. But the
Mm.
reality is the bank look at the entirety of your financial position. So they're going to look at your credit cards and even the history. So if let's say in the past you have defaulted in paying, say, your phone bills, and
Mm.
it create it and it will appear in your credit history and could be it will bring down your credit score. So if your credit score is low, then there is less confidence from the lender to lend you money.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what I'm going to talk about are just like tips for you to make sure that you maintain a high credit score so that when you're ready to borrow, it's not an issue for you. So, yeah. So, one is to pay existing loans and debts on time, and that's
Mm.
making punctual payments. So, if it's due on that day, pay it on that day, because if not, then any default will be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Don't also like ignore phone bills because I had clients before where they had a dispute on a phone bill less than $500. They just forgot about it, and then it appeared in their credit history, and it created a lot of back and forths. They were able to borrow it at the end.
Mm.
But what I'm saying is, if you're on top of these things, you don't even have to
Yeah.
deal with this kind of scenarios in the future. So that's one. Also
Mm-hmm.
consider new credit card application because the more that you have in your credit card limit, it's not even the balance, it's the credit limit. Because the how lender looks at it is that you're going to be spending whatever is the limit. Even though you'd say your limit is 15K and you have a balance of 1K, the bank will still assess you based on the 15K. And that
Yeah.
brings to the next point, where I would say, where possible, and if you don't need it and you're going to apply soon, lower your credit card limit balance. It personally happened to
Mm,
me when in the past years, I have to apply a loan for an investment.
mhm,
I have to
mhm,
reduce my credit card balance, and it's pretty normal. You could just juggle it as and when you need to bring it higher and lower. But yeah, that will be something that the lenders will really, really look at when it
mhm.
comes to your credit history, because that tells them how good you are in paying the repayments in the future.
Right. And I'm very happy that we've included this in the question V, because this will allow our nurses to really, look at it holistically when they are, getting ready to invest, right?
Mm,
And so, again, we need to be financially ready. And part of that is what you've just mentioned now, V. Some very good tips there. And yes, so in terms of strategies, V, I believe, given that you do have, like a really good property portfolio, saving for home deposit. So share some practical tips for budgeting and saving, that could be tailored to our nurses listeners out there, especially with the salary that they're getting. Nurses these days get minimum of 85K annually,
mm,
right? And that's not including the overtime.
yeah,
So that's a really good, salary to start
yeah,
with. Is that pay? Any tips for
yeah.
them?
Well, definitely that's a good salary, a good starting salary. And before I say about the tips, and it's just a general indication for people to know, at today's rate, 6.05, let's say you're getting an annual salary of 90K, you'll be able to
Mm.
borrow about approximately 450K. So this is for single with no liability. So
Mm.
just an indication, and it's also based on today's interest rate, so it will fluctuate. All right.
Yeah, right.
Tips.
Yes.
Firstly, and number one tip here is for you to understand your income and expenses. So this includes your regular pay, and if you are doing some overtime, you need to plan, and possibly allowances. So there are allowances that can be included in the calculation of your borrowing capacity. So get a clear picture of your monthly take home pay each month. Then that way you can plan how much goes to savings, how much goes to emergency fund, and if you have that money that you're not using, maybe it's worthwhile putting it in a high interest savings account whilst you're not using it. And then, so that also, say, just create a separate fund for each. Then that way you know that
Mm.
whatever is left in your sort of expense account is what is the maximum amount you'll be spending each month.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
to be able to save and hit your target, it's really important for you to have that discipline.
Right.
And
Yes, definitely.
yeah, and if there are plans for you to also utilize overtime or bonuses, yeah, definitely have like a planner, and then have some rough calculation of how much you intend, additional hours you intend to work, and then put it
Mm-hmm.
in your spreadsheet, and then you know that you're going to hit your target at what point in time. So it's important to set a date also when it comes to planning, not just working on saving, but also setting a goal for yourself as to when, because if not, it will be a moving, like a moving goal post for you. And so yeah, the discipline will go away. So it's very important to have that factor of timing, and also the
Mm-hmm.
discipline to save. And yeah, as you review all your expenses in a detailed format, you would know also that which ones are actually unnecessary expenses. So could be a subscription that you hardly use, could be a luxury item that maybe you don't really need at that time, and maybe you could just
Mm-hmm.
hold off buying. I know a client who didn't buy a car until after a loan application has been fully submitted and approved. Because again, a car loan, it will appear as a debt, and
Yeah.
therefore will reduce your capacity to borrow. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's just really a some of the high level tips that I could give. But remember that saving a deposit for your home loan for your home is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So it's really long. So you have to have that discipline and consistent
Mm-hmm.
effort because sometimes it requires some sacrifice too. But if you have a solid plan and determination, this is definitely achievable.
Mm-hmm. And our listeners are getting excited with that, because very good tips there, by the way, V. Discipline is the key, right? And I remember when I was saving for our deposit, I managed to save up 10% deposit. And at that time, what I did, it's true, you gotta have to really look at your account.
Mm,
Okay, might have to spend bit of time really to sit down, write down what are you spending, where is it going, and be very disciplined to like buying stuff, because buying a property is the first priority, isn't it, V?
mm.
And this is why we're here today, V and me, to help you guys get there. Okay, now success story, V. Maybe we can give our listener, an example of how you've helped someone, an example of a nurse that has got there.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be an exciting for our
Yeah, I'm
listeners.
I'm very excited to share with everyone this story. So, this young nurse began her career at Westmead Hospital. She's
Mm,
not the she's a client that I help with. She's really very determined, and she has her dreams on getting her first home as soon as possible. So what she
okay.
did, yeah, so what she did was because she knows she only have a little bit of money at the beginning, so about 5%. And so what she did was she bought an off the plan property, which will be
Mm,
completed in 2 years. So she put in her money, 5%, signed the contract, and then she knows that she had 2 years, and that 2 years is not going to move, right? So she has that 2 years for her to save for the
save.
remaining 15%. So
Mm-hmm.
she meticulously analyzed her finances, and it became apparent to her that her primary job will not suffice to accumulate the required savings in time. So this goes back to the
Mm,
tips that we mentioned earlier.
that's right.
So she decided she's going to take on a second job. She worked casually on Saturdays. By the way, I'm not advocating that you work too much
Yes,
and you burn yourself out, but she
that's
knows what she
right.
has to do. I think
Mm-hmm.
the important bit here is just knowing your levers, where you can make adjustments so that you can achieve what you need to do. So that's what she has done. So that was her decision. So she worked on her second job, keep on saving, saving, saving. And we're talking about 2 years here, so it's not a short period of time. And this has been a turning point for her to, yeah, accelerate her savings and most importantly, to ensure that she's going to get a loan, the loan that she needs at
Mm-hmm.
the settlement date. And so she did all
Very
that.
good.
Her efforts paid off, and she got the key to her home, and she's very happy. And also because she works so hard and she's so disciplined, after buying a home, she didn't realize that she saved so much that she's also able to afford to buy a new car. So
Wow.
so yeah, she's really a good example of that dedication and determination and
Mm-hmm.
and sacrifice, I would say.
And this is a single person we're
That's
talking
right.
about.
Yes.
Wow. So how awesome is that, nurses? I hope you guys are listening intently, and it's very possible for you. Okay, and what an amazing example, right, V? And so I think, the right mindset, discipline, it will definitely get you there. Okay, I was just gonna share my story, but when you share that story, single person, nurses, everyone can own a property. Okay, because when you do have a goal, when the moment you write that down, right, research shows, V, and then you tell it to your neighbor or your friend, 72% it will get done. I can just imagine her, every time she worked that extra, she's getting getting closer and closer to her goal. Not only that, right? She managed to buy a car. So thank you so much for sharing that, V. That's very encouraging story. And me and V, guys, we're here to help. I mean, especially V, given her portfolio and experience in investing, I can vouch for her. She's very honest. I mean, I call her with, my investment strategy as well, right? And V is always there. She's very honest with her feedback as well. She's not, there to just help you, but she's there to go overboard to help you. And V, now, what everyone's asking now is if they need help, how can they come to you and how can you help them?
Yeah, well, thank you. Am I'll be very pleased to help you if you need my help. You can visit my website, veeperez.com, veeperez.com. And from there, I encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter because every week, straight to your inbox, I'm going to send you strategies for saving effectively for your investment. Um, how to increase your chance of your how what are the factors involved in measuring or calculating your borrowing capacity so you can be strategic, and other tips and techniques that you need for your home ownership journey. In
Mm-hmm.
there, I also gonna be putting in because I'm running this property wealth creation program. So if you want to educate yourself further, you can sign up on my website to join the wait list. And yeah, and if you want to connect, I'll be thrilled to see you on my social media. The links are also all in the website.
Yes, and also got everyone nurses. We're gonna put down the V, in the description below, to make sure that you get in contact with V as well. Okay, and thank you so much for tuning in for the rest of the video and this interview with V. And V, again, I wanted to thank you so much for taking your time. I know you're busy, very busy. You're running a few businesses here and there, and getting really good work that you do. We appreciate you so much. And I do hope that we continue our friendship, and don't feel if I need help, thank you so much for being there.
Most
Okay.
welcome.
All right.
Thanks for having
Okay.
me.
All right. So thank you so much, nurses, for tuning in. And I'll see you again in my next podcast. We'll make sure that we're only going to be producing interesting and very helpful topic for you. Bye for now, nurses.